Hello, my name is Donald Bansen, and I'm 96 years old. I was born on July 23rd, 1920. Well, it wasn't the best of the times, I suppose, because I can remember our house was on backed up on the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, and when the trains came through carrying coal, the sons of some of my neighbors would get on the coal car a couple miles away, toss off chunks of coke or whatever the coal was that they were using at that time, and then they'd get off a couple miles down the track and go back with a burlap bag and pick up that coke, and that's how they got coal to heat their home. They couldn't afford to buy it, so that was just one example that comes to mind. Something I've never forgotten. And fortunately, my father had a job during a recession, or the depression rather, and I was very fortunate that he could send my sister, my brother, and I all to private school. We went to a school called George School in Newtown, Pennsylvania. It was a Quaker coeducational boarding school, and I can't believe to this day that he could have afforded the tuition there. But we did have scholarships, working scholarships, which supplemented the cost of the school, and it was a wonderful education. Unfortunately, in my case, I probably didn't utilize it as best as I might have, because I became an airplane mechanic rather than my mother wanted me to become a mechanical engineer, and we went to Drexel Tech in Philadelphia, which had a good engineering school, and the chap that I spoke to said, well, he looked at my grades in math and science or one other subject, I guess, and said, well, I don't think you're really cut out for an engineer, so back to square one. I had seen an ad in the paper one day for a mechanics school, and I went there, and after a year, or 13 months, I guess, about a week after I graduated, Pan American Airways in New York called the school and asked for 7 mechanics. And they picked out 7 of us, I guess, and we all went up by train, and I think we're all hired except one man, which always I felt offended because he was Jewish, and Pan Am at that time, at least in New York, didn't hire Jews. And today, of course, I couldn't have done that, but in those days, they kind of did what they wanted to. However, it was a good job, and I stayed there for 40 years. So in 1943, Pan Am had Navy contracts, and they didn't want to lose all their mechanics to the draft, and so we went down to the recruiting place in New York City and signed up for the Navy. The ones that wanted to, it was a voluntary thing, but a lot of the mechanics did. And then after a few months, I don't think it was much more than that, some of the mechanics asked for active duty. When my brother, who was 4 years younger than me, was drafted, went in the Air Force, I decided it was time for me to do my bit, because I didn't want my little brother fighting the war for me. So I asked for active duty, and then I found out that I hadn't passed the eye test, so I wasn't eligible for active duty. But I asked them if they could give me a retest, because when they tested my eyes originally, they said, take your glasses off, read the eye chart, and it takes a person who wears glasses all the time a little while to adjust their eyes. So they said, okay, they were willing to do that. So a corpsman, Navy corpsman, took me up to a room where they had an eye chart. It was empty otherwise, I guess, maybe some tables or whatever. And he said, I have to get out in the hall for a minute, so don't study the eye chart. Giving me just what I needed, but I didn't really have to do it. I took my glasses off and let my eyes adjust. And when he came back, I passed the test. So that's how I got in the Navy. But of course, that was just the beginning. Then I had to go back to work until they called me up a few months later, and they assigned me to a base in Newfoundland, Argentina, Newfoundland. When I saw it written, I thought, that sounds like Argentina, but it's not. It's spelled differently. And at any rate, that seemed to be where they sent all the airline mechanics who had asked for active duty in the Navy, perhaps to keep them out of the fighting. I don't know what the intent was, but they had a base up there. It was a beautiful little air station with a repair shop. They called it an A&R, Assembly and Repair of Aircraft. And it was part of a headquarters squadron which had gone over to England and left a couple of airplanes behind that really weren't in fighting shape. So that was all we had to work on as far as airplanes were concerned. They had a beautiful machine shop, and we had some old Navy chief petty officers that were machinists, I guess, and so they set up a school and taught the mechanics how to use all the different machines at the machine shop, which was a good experience. And what else did we do? They had a gunnery range there, and we learned how to use all the guns, 45 Colt pistol, 30 caliber machine gun, and we used to shoot skeet, which is, shotguns and I forget what the clay pigeons. Yeah, that was fun, except it was hard on your shoulder when that gun went off. Yeah. Anyhow, that was a nice, not necessarily nice, but an interesting part of the thing, and I felt comfortable using a gun after that. When I went in the Navy, I should backtrack a little bit and say that I had a good rating as an enlisted man in the Navy. I had a first-class petty officer's rating, based, I guess, on my age and my experience at Pan Am. So I was a first-class aviation machinist mate, and one of the duties of the first-class petty officers at Norfolk Naval Air Station was to stand duty one day a week or one day a month. I don't remember exactly how long. And one day I had the duty. We had a little shack outside of the hangar. And there was a duty officer who was a lieutenant, I think, and he was inside in his office in the hangar. But we had like a lean-to outside. Anyhow, when my relief came during the day, I had to hand over the Colt automatic pistol, which was our badge of honor, you might say, to the other fellow, and he was supposed to pull the slide back and take the cartridge out, pull the slide back, and then fire it to make sure it was empty. Well, he pulled the slide back before he took the cartridge out, and he put a bullet in place. And of course, when he went up, I said, "You're going to fire a bullet. You've got a bullet in there." He said, "No, I don't." Now, this fellow was a regular Navy, and I assumed that he should have known better than me that gun was going to fire, but he didn't. So he fired a bullet through the roof, and we waited and waited to see if the lieutenant heard that and was going to come out, He never did, apparently. He never heard it, so the only problem was after that, getting another bullet to replace the one that he fired. So he took care of that, apparently, and but that was one of the funny experiences I had in the Navy. Yes, I think I went in about August of 1943 and came out in March of 46. From my standpoint, it wasn't bad because I never left the country, never got in any fighting. I felt, and my brother the same way. He became a pilot. Well, not quite. They washed him out, I think, on the last type of airplane he was supposed to learn to fly. Because they didn't need any more pilots at the time, apparently. And he was all over the country in different air stations, air bases, I should say, Army, Air Force bases. And so we were two lucky guys, really. Well, of course, we knew what was going on in the war from the news media. And it wasn't a pleasant place, of course, because so many people were getting killed. And I'm not sure that I remember too much about my feelings in those days. But I did. I had an opportunity while I was in Norfolk Naval Air Station to go to school in Chicago. I thought I had a chance to become chief petty officer, which I would have liked. But I thought if I was going back to work for Pan Am after the war, it would be more valuable to go to school. It was called the Advanced Engines School, and I knew that they would have engines there that Pan Am would probably use, and it would benefit me greatly that way, which it did. But Chicago was a great place for duty. It was inland, no ships coming in, sending all the sailors ashore to have good times. And so anyhow, I had a girlfriend there who I would probably have married, except that I was a Quaker, and her father, she was Catholic, and her father said, he's not a Catholic, you can't marry him. So that pretty much ended our relationship because I was transferred then to San Diego, where I finished up my active duty. But while I was in Norfolk, another interesting experience was as a flight engineer. We were overhauling PBM flying boats, which are twin-engine patrol bombers. And after they were overhauled, we had to test fly them first, make sure everything was all right, and then deliver them to whoever needed the plane. So after going up on one test flight, they asked for volunteers. They didn't have any flight engineers. They had some pilots assigned to Norfolk, but they didn't have any flight engineers. So they asked for a volunteer to ferry an airplane to Corpus Christi, Texas. So I said, okay, I'll do that. No training or anything. I hardly even knew the airplane, but the Navy didn't. That was the way the military was in those days. They used you for whatever they could, whether you knew it or not. Anyhow, I did it, and it was an interesting experience. We flew down there one day, I guess, and flew back the next day. I don't remember how we got back. Probably had a commercial airliner, I would think. And then a couple of weeks later, they wanted someone to take a plane to California. And now these are seaplanes, and you're flying all the way across the U.S. So I volunteered for that, and we flew to a place called Eagle Mountain Lake in Texas. And after the war, I looked for that in the map, and I never could find it. But it is there, apparently, because someone else told me, I think, that it was there one time. However, we stopped there the first night, and we were flying low because those airplanes didn't fly very high to begin with. And there was a lot of rough weather bouncing around, and we had two pilots, and second pilot, and a radio man and a flight engineer. So the crew, I guess the first morning out of Norfolk, the crew asked for some. We had a galley in the airplane, asked for some breakfast. So I told the radio man, I said, "You go make breakfast." I figured I was a more important job than his. So he looked at me, he said, "I can't, I'm sick." So I don't think he threw up, but he felt sick. Well, I did too. So we weren't a very good pair. The pilots apparently didn't feel any problem with the turbulence. So I said, "Well, I guess it's my job to go back and cook breakfast." So I went back and cooked some eggs and bacon for them and satisfied them. But I don't think the radio man or I ever ate any breakfast that day. But by late afternoon, we arrived in Texas, and we stayed overnight there. And the next morning, took off and flew to San Diego, where they had a big Navy base. And we stayed there the next night. And the third night, we flew up to South San Francisco, where the Coast Guard had a base, and apparently wanted an airplane. And that was where we went. Unfortunately, in Norfolk at that time, I guess it was in May if I remember, we were in our white uniforms, summer uniforms in other words. And San Francisco was a cold place to begin with. And boy, we weren't prepared for that at all. We didn't have any picos or any dungarees or anything like that to wear. So we were walking around, because the radio man and I buddied together, and we wanted to see what we could of San Francisco while we were there. So we walked around, and the wind it was a cold wind anyhow. But we had to wait a few days, I guess, for the Navy to arrange transportation back to Norfolk for us. And finally, they put us on United Airlines, and they flew us back across country. And that was one of the more interesting parts of my Navy career. And when I got out of the Navy, I wanted a car. I'd never had one before because I couldn't afford it. I'd saved up some money, and they were just putting cars back into production because they'd stopped during the war. The boarding school I went to with a girl named, what was her name anyhow? Her last name was Clark, and her father had a Ford dealership not too far from where we lived in Pennsylvania. And I guess when I was home one time, I asked if he could get me a car. And it wasn't long before I had a nice 1947 Ford, black four-door sedan, which is my pride and joy for a number of years. But of course that gave me an opportunity to, I think he was probably thinking maybe that would help his daughter get a beau, but I really didn't have any eyes on her, so that didn't work out if that's what he had in mind. But nonetheless, I used to drive back and forth on weekends when I was off and stay at my parents' house. And I decided I'd like to have a date with a girl down there. And there was another family friend who was my age. I can't remember all the connections between her father and my father. Worked for Linton's Restaurants in Philadelphia, which was a chain of restaurants owned by a cousin of mine. And nonetheless, I called her up one time when I was home and asked if I could have a date. And she said, well, she just became engaged, so that was out. But she said, I have a girlfriend that works for me. They were both secretaries at Scott Paper Company in Chester, Pennsylvania. And she said, would I like to meet her? So I thought, why not? She sounded like a nice girl, and she was. So my friend set up the blind date, and we went over, or I drove over to her house and met Merle, and asked if she'd like to go down to Wilmington, Delaware, to the DuPont Hotel. They had a good dance band there, and I thought, well, we could try dancing together and have a couple of drinks and get acquainted, which we did, and it turned out to be the best thing I ever did. So, well, she was attractive. She was quiet, not boisterous or anything. I don't know how to describe her really. She was a lady, first of all, and something I want to say, but I can't bring it up. Of course, every time I came home, then I would call her up and we'd have a date and go someplace, I guess. And we liked to dance, so that was good. And because when I was in the Navy, I always went to the USO clubs and danced, and loved it. Jitterbugging and all the dances were in favor in those days. So we did the same thing, and eventually, I guess I asked her to marry me, and she thought it over. I often think now, not often, but sometimes I think now, why does she want to marry me, an airplane mechanic, making minimal wages, you might say? And she had a good job. She was the secretary, an executive secretary to 3 vice presidents of Scott Paper Company. And she had to give that up to marry me and move over to New York, where I lived. And but she was willing to do it, which is to her credit. And so we were married in Ocean City, New Jersey. Her father was the treasurer, I think, of the Presbyterian church there. So we were married in the Presbyterian church, and had a reception at the best hotel in Ocean City, New Jersey, I guess is about all I can say about it. And we had a lot of family friends, of course, that were there. And one of the funniest things is when we were going on our honeymoon, we had gone to her father's house after the reception, and a lot of the other friends had gone there too. We got in my car and we started down the road, and here's this rattle, rattle, rattle. So they'd put some stones in the hubcap. Now you got 4 wheels on a car. Which one are you going to select to take off and see if it's good? Fortunately, I picked the right one first, the right rear wheel. But that was just a funny aside, you might say. And then we drove over to New York and stayed at the Beekman Park Hotel for our wedding night. And the next morning we flew to Bermuda on Pan Am. I'd gotten tickets for us on Pan Am, and we stayed at the Elbow Beach Surf Club, which was one of the better ones that Pan Am had an arrangement with, where you could get discounted room rates. And so we had a nice honeymoon there. And then we went back, and we had a new apartment in Bayside, New York. That was just being built, and fortunately, timing was right, and we found one that suited us, and we stayed there until that was in 1950 or 1949, actually. We were married May 28th, 1949, and I guess a couple years later, we had enough money saved to look for a home. So we drove out. I guess we'd seen an ad in the New York Times, maybe for, I think it was Harwood Homes or Harvick Homes in Farmingdale, Long Island. So we drove out there and looked at the homes and picked one out and made a down payment, and that's where we moved to about a little less than a year later, I guess, and stayed there until 1984. I think New Zealand was one of my favorites because Merle and I went there on a fly drive vacation one time. Pan Am flew there to Auckland, New Zealand, and at Pan Am every 5 years, if you were, I guess if you were in management, you got a first-class ticket any place you wanted to go. So I used that. We were flying, I think, the 747s by that time. And in fact, like I say, just started flying. So we flew out there and had a rental car waiting for us. And we started in the North Island of New Zealand and drove down to the South Island, hitting all the spots that were good. And I had to learn to drive on the left side of the road, though, which was a little challenging sometimes, especially on roundabouts. But we didn't have any trouble until we got someplace in the South Island, I think. And one day we were coming out of the motel where we were staying, and I just automatically got in the right lane. And it was in a town, and there was a curve in the road ahead. And people looking at me, wondering what's he doing in the right-hand lane. And here comes a truck in the right-hand lane. So I immediately moved over to the left-hand lane, and that was the only experience I had. It was a little dangerous, you might say, driving in a foreign country. But it was a beautiful country, and the people were friendly, and I guess I would like to have gone back. Well, I did go back once with Betty later on. But unfortunately, she was having a sick spell, and we couldn't stay very long. We missed most of it. The technology is really no word for it in my vocabulary. It's changed so radically and so fast. Perhaps it's not fast because I'm 96 years old, but nonetheless, it seems like it's fast to me. When I grew up, we didn't even have a phone until I was, I don't know how long. We lived in a place called Glenolden, Pennsylvania, and I think we had a party line probably for a while. That's something that the young people probably have no idea what a party line is, but there are multiple people on the same line. And you have to make sure that nobody else is using a phone when you want to talk. So, of course, I don't know how long that lasted, but it wasn't too popular, I'm sure. I have reservations about whether we've learned. If you read the newspapers every day, you know that there's so many things going on, and we get involved in so many of them. Fortunately, in the last few years, they've all been overseas someplace, but there's always a chance that we get dragged into it and get involved in a fight with some other country. Well, I figure it would probably be either Russia or China, or possibly even North Korea, which aren't friends of the U.S., any of them really. And but I hope that our president and our government will steer clear of another war. That doesn't mean that there won't be wars, and there are wars right now going on all over the Middle East and other parts of the world. Well, no, I don't, because I think that people are what they are. There are people that are born and raised as liberal in a liberal family, and they accept all those things, changes. But there are other people who are conservative, very conservative, and they learn from their parents, and they're not ready to accept other people, foreigners, you might want to say, and I'm sure there will always be some of those people. It's just human nature, I suppose, to be different, and hopefully we'll get on the right track here in this country and accept immigrants like we have in the past. Unfortunately, a lot of them are undocumented, but nonetheless, they're here to work the jobs that most Americans probably wouldn't want to do or couldn't do. So that's the price of life we have, I think. Well, I hope that they will be liberals like I am. Well, I would hope that they go to school and get a good education, which is something that everyone should have. Unfortunately, in this country, it's usually possible. Unfortunately, the college cost of going to college nowadays in private schools is ridiculous. But I'm sure there are plenty of state universities like you went to that most people can afford. But I think a good education is something that everyone should take advantage of. And hopefully that will teach them the proper lessons in life so that they can be productive citizens. And travel is broadening, as the expression goes. And yeah, there's so many places in this world to see that I feel quite fortunate that I was able to see many places that some of my contemporaries have never had the opportunity to see. And it's really, well, it's great because it gives you a little broader vision of what it's like in the rest of the world, so that you don't just think everything is like it is here in the U.S., education-wise, livelihoods, things like that are entirely different than we have here at home. Bill Clinton was my favorite president. I know he's not very popular right today with a lot of people, but when he was president, the country did very well. They reduced the deficit, and I just liked him. He had a few failings, of course, which kind of spoiled his reputation, and that was certainly unfortunate. But other than that, I thought he did a great job as president, and well, I don't think people know exactly what the president's going to be like. They think they do because of his background and what he's done and what he's said in the past. But once you get in that office, there's a lot of responsibilities that aren't as apparent maybe in the beginning as there are. So we can't always choose the right person, unfortunately. And I think this is a case where we did choose the wrong person for president. However, I just have hopes that because even though he wants to do things, he's realizing now, I suppose, that he can't do it. Some of the things he thought he could before. He's a businessman, and he was a CEO, I suppose, so he could dictate what he wanted done, and people would have to do it. But now he has so many other types of affiliations with other countries, and that you don't just do what you want to with them. You have to realize that they're countries in their own right, and don't want to be walked on by us or anything like that. I probably never thought about it because it was always there. It was always a man. And going back to when I was growing up in Pennsylvania, I lived in a town called Glenolden, and I think population was about 5,000, and there was one black family there. So I never really had much. I never had any connection with them, of course, but it wasn't until I guess I went to work for Pan Am that I worked with black people, black men, and that wasn't for a long time either. I guess later on, of course, when the Americans for, what is it, the ADA, I can't always think of the words for the abbreviation, but they made it possible for black people and for other people to do the same job that white people did. And I guess in the Navy, I was thrown up against some of them. And yeah, well, yeah, that was quite an achievement and a change. I was happy to see that, and I think he was a good president. Not everybody agrees with me, obviously, but I think he did a lot for this country, and he was certainly a gentleman. Never suffered any scandals that I can recall, and so. Well, I think we were ready for a woman this time. She won the popular vote, but not the electoral college. So there you go. Now not everybody, but a lot of people want to change, to get rid of the electoral college. And I guess in my own mind, that would probably not be a bad idea. I recognize the reason for it, but nonetheless, if it overrides the popular vote, I don't think that's good either, because it makes you a little bit leery of our government. It was a real down time, because people couldn't believe that would happen, and he was such a popular man, and beautiful wife, and family, and it was just almost too much to bear. I'm pretty sure I was working at the time. I guess I was an inspector at Pan Am, maintenance inspector, and I'm sure the word came through. We didn't have a TV in our office or anything, but we heard about it. And I guess when I got home at night, I put it on TV, of course, and saw what transpired. That was a bad time. Senator McCarthy went after anybody that he thought was a communist, regardless of whether they were or not. And if they were, I don't know what he thought they were going to do, take over the country and turn us into a communist country. I think he was a little mentally deranged myself, because he wouldn't give it up. Then he picked on people that he shouldn't have. And Dalton Trumbo was one of them. Well, I think they're bigger and broader than they ever have been before. They seem attracted, especially the women, banding together and marching for their rights and equal pay, Planned Parenthood, and things like that. Yeah, I think it's great. I don't see a problem with it. They have to let their wishes be known, and that's one way to do it, with a large group of people to get together and march. Hopefully, yes, it does. Doesn't always, but of course, if you're in an executive position, you have to take note of things like that, and not just overlook them or say, "Oh, well, that's not very important," because it is important, and they have to recognize that. Oh, sure. There will always be things come up that we don't have, or situations that didn't exist before. And people have to band together and force the government, if necessary, to adopt changes. Change is always going to be there, whether we like it or not. That's one thing that we can't really control. Well, I'm an environmentalist, at least I consider myself, and I've been a bird watcher for many years, and I love nature, and I'm just afraid that with the current president, a lot of that's going to go out the window, you might say. They want to do away with the Environmental Protection Agency, which is our protection. It took years to develop all these restrictions, if you will, and in one fell swoop they're going to eliminate that if they can get away with it, and I don't see anything that's going to stop them. It's unfortunate because it took years to, and other parts of our country too, or features that took years to develop, and with an executive order or some other Congress passing a law just wiped them out. And I'm not happy about that. It's the only Earth we have. They want to develop Mars or other places, the moon maybe or something, but it's probably not ever going to happen in our lifetime, certainly, and maybe not even in the future. So we're more or less stuck here on Earth, and we've got to make the best of it. And if we don't make the best of it, it's certainly not going to be a pleasurable place to live. I've been a philanthropist, if you will, for the last number of years. I don't know how long. I contribute to a lot of these organizations, and Nature's Conservancy, Audubon Chapter Society, Sierra Club, and of course I get all their inputs, and I know what's going on in the environment pretty well, and I'm not too happy about a lot of things. Of course, there's always room for improvement, but one of my favorite charities is the Earth Justice, which a lot of people probably never heard of rather. It began as the Sierra Club Defense Fund, where they took people to court to mostly political jurisdictions that they took to court, I guess, because they passed a law or tried to pass a law to do something that was against the environment, and the Earth Justice would provide lawyers to fight it, and they won most of the battles because people skirt the law in a lot of cases, and if the government doesn't force them to follow the law, which they don't in a lot of cases, they have to go to court and force them to do it. So I'm very happy to contribute money to that. And I also like Doctors Without Borders. I think that's a great organization, and I'm always happy to contribute to their work. No, I'm pretty happy with the way my life went. I thought I had a blessed life. Never had any, well, when Merle got cancer, of course that was a real low period of my life, and passed away. But I lived through it, and I had a friend close by, which was Betty, and Betty was very helpful to me in my mourning period, and I had a good life with her as well. I was very disappointed when she passed away. So I've decided that two's enough. I don't plan to marry again. I have a wonderful family, and fortunately, as far as I know, they're all in good health, which is pretty good because so many families, the children pass away before the parents, and that's certainly not a very happy situation. It could still happen with me, but it's not likely, I don't think. And my grandchildren are fine. I love them all. Don't get to see them very often, but that's something that we can overcome, I'm sure. Oh, well, I hope that their visits to me were worth their efforts, and I'm sure they were. I'd like to see them more often, of course, but at my age, it's a little difficult for me to do a lot of traveling, although I have done it. And when they can come visit me, that's wonderful, and I look forward to that. Well, I thought I was a good person, and I tried to be, certainly. Whether or not I succeeded all the time, I'm not sure. But yes, I would want them to think. I was raised as a Quaker until I was, I guess, 63, when, because of circumstances, I became a Methodist. And I go to church every Sunday, when I can, of course. And I've been active in my church, not to any great extent, but minor active. And I think I'm a good person.
I think so too.